Hi there, and welcome to Tea with the Fertility Godmother. Today we're going to talk about some questions that, excuse me, that you want to ask your fertility doctor before, or if you're considering to do IVF. So I'm Denise Noyer-Arez, and I am the owner of AIM Wellness Clinic in Westlake Village, California, and we are. I get a chance to work with couples who want to get prepared and get as healthy as possible and be able to correct their underlying conditions before they get pregnant so they can have a healthy pregnancy. So today we are going to talk about some of the questions that you might want to consider asking your fertility doctor before you do IVF, because I see a lot of couples or women actually that come in and sometimes they're feeling like they have to go to IVF right away, and often that's not the case. Sometimes it is. So you just really want to make sure that you're asking, why do I have to do IVF first, and why do I have to do it like right now? Why is it so urgent? So many times some doctors like to play on the fear of people. There's a lot of amazing doctors out there, but sometimes you'll get some doctors that will instill fear in you and make you feel like you have to rush right away to do IVF. And so just make sure you ask them, is there another option for me? And why are you doing IVF? Why wouldn't an insemination work? Maybe try to get an insemination as a try, because there's always going to be a starting point. You want to make sure, like just as if you're going to another doctor, like an orthopedic or an oncologist, or you want to make sure that this treatment is going to be the best treatment for you, and why. So if you're going to an orthopedic surgeon, for example, because you have pain, a great surgeon is going to tell you, to give you other options before they jump right to surgery, unless it's an emergency that you have that surgery. So it's the same thing for when you're going to start IVF. A lot of things you really want to pay attention to are, how are you feeling when you're talking to the doctor? Is he answering your questions? Is he comfortable asking your questions? Is he giving you information? I know everybody's so different in the amount of information they want to know as they're going through their process. Some people want to know every single detail, and some people really just want to trust their doctor and make sure that it's just going to be handled. And either way is great. So make sure that your doctor is that right person for you to either hold your hand or just let go. But if you are the type of person that doesn't want to know much because it feels like you're adding more pressure to yourself, then at least do your due diligence in the beginning so that you know that you chose the right doctor for your path. One thing that you really want to also ask your doctor about is about the lab. So the lab is very important, and many people don't think about that when you're going to an IVF clinic, because you're just making that connection with your doctor. But the lab is really important, especially if you're going to do IVF. You want to make sure they're using the state-of-the-art equipment, and you want to make sure that, maybe even ask them about what they call the SART results, so that they can look into what their results are. But then you also need to check to make sure, like, what type of patients is that IVF doctor seeing, because there's some doctors that will help, everybody that they can, and then there's some doctors that will just help specific people so that their results look better, their statistics look better. So you want to kind of check that out. What's a SART result? A SART result is it's a government agency that checks the lab, and you get your statistics, and they regulate to make sure that you're in the state-of-the-art equipment to make sure that they're storing your embryos with the best quality. So that's really important. And then we just recently we had some really sad tragedy happen with 2 IVF clinics, and it was very unfortunate, but there was a lot of embryos lost. So the discussion now starts to become like, what are your emergency procedures if there is an emergency? I think with those 2 clinics it was faulty equipment, and I believe it's the first time that it's happened. So it's very rare that it happens, but especially if you're here in California, we have earthquakes, but there's also tornadoes and hurricanes. So what are the emergency procedures that they use to keep your embryos safe if you end up freezing your embryos down the road? Another question that would be really important to ask would be, does your clinic do ICSI, and is it mandatory to do ICSI? So there are some clinics that think it's mandatory to do ICSI. Now, I'm a holistic natural physician, so in my opinion, I think ICSI should be done as a last resort, because I think there should be some natural selection, if you will, going on during the fertilization process. I don't think we know exactly at this point how to pick that perfect sperm or the best sperm. They're just going by looks, and you don't know what's going on inside with the DNA. So I think that natural selection is best, in my opinion. But some clinics really push you for ICSI, and sometimes it's necessary to do ICSI. So if you wanted to try to have a natural fertilization, will you let them do sometimes they'll do an emergency ICSI, so they'll watch the embryos, and then if they see that it's not fertilizing, then they can do what they call a rescue ICSI or an emergency ICSI. So that those are options for you. The other thing is, how do they watch your embryos as they're growing? Do they have to open the container all the time and look at them? How often do they look at them? Do they have a special, I don't remember what it's called right now, but they have a technology where they can just view them, they have a camera on them, and they can just take a look at them. So you want to know what kind of technology they have and how they are babysitting your babies. One very important question that I think you should ask, and I'm a little bit biased here, but I find it very, very important, is so medical doctors are amazing at what they do, getting the IVF, but there's another side of that, and that's the complementary medicine, the holistic part. What are steps that you can do to help improve your chances of getting pregnant? And that would be, so you want to make sure that they're open to acupuncture and supplements and herbs, and maybe recommend a diet for you. And most of the doctors can't give you all that information, but they probably work with, hi Cindy, they probably work with somebody who is capable of giving you that information. So that's going to be important too. And you need to ask. So I've had a really great relationships with some fertility doctors in the area. They love working with me. I love working with them. But they don't often say, here, go do complementary medicine, go do acupuncture, go get, go see a nutritionist. They, unless you ask. And that seems to be, for most of the IVF clinics, there are a few that work with doctors. So the doctors haven't gotten to that point yet where they're saying, here, this is really important for you to do. Sometimes the nurses will do that. But usually it's after, unfortunately, there's been several failed IVFs, and then they say. So a lot of doctors don't have you do that up front. So it's important that you ask ahead of time so you can get started, because there is going to be a window of opportunity for you to really work with your diet and do the best you can for egg quality before you actually go down that IVF path. Okay, so while you're doing your consultation under the IVF doctor, during that consultation, usually what they'll do is they'll do a history, they'll do an examination, and when they're doing an examination, they're going to be looking at your ovaries to see how many follicles you have. It's called an antral follicle count, and that number is really important, and in my opinion, what your ovaries look like is even more important than what your lab values tell you, because there's still some variation in the numbers, and for them, the numbers are for medical doctors, the numbers are very important, and for myself, it's more about the quality and what's going on in your body and how your body is responding, and kind of putting that all together. So that's really important. So there you have it. There's some really important questions that I think you should talk to your doctor about. You really want to make sure that you have a good rapport, because this is an emotional time, and it's very challenging emotionally, financially, physically. So you want to make sure you have that good rapport and that relationship with the doctor for whatever that looks like for you. You want to ask them about their lab. Make sure that it's a state-of-the-art lab. You also want to make sure that they work with a complementary medicine physicians, such as myself or other acupuncturists, fertility acupuncturists. It's really important to make sure you work with somebody who understands the fertility process and everything that's involved there. Okay, so I hope that is helpful for you. If you would like to hear more information and more tips, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. We will be providing you some more information about helping you get pregnant and easing those chances. Okay, make it a great day. Here's to your fertility.